Old Soul Podcast. My name is Bree, that's spelled B-R-E-I. Thank you so much. Today's film commentary discussion is going to be about the film titled Annihilation. This film was released in the year of 2018, rated R, runtime of 1 hour and 55 minutes. And the director is Garland. I have had this film sort of like on my radar for a long time. I think the first time I saw it was when I was in college, and sometimes in school they would have like these movie nights where the school would put on movie events for you to go and watch the film. And I think the only thing about this film that I feel like was taken from me was the fact that I wasn't able to watch it on the big screen and nothing else. So the first watch, I remember it being really, really interesting and ambiguous and different and scientific. I think this would fall in the psychological horror sci-fi genre. Yeah, I think that's a good fit for it. And I don't think I'm gonna do a really long discussion of this film just because personally I feel like there's a lot to dissect with this film. I think there are a lot of layers, and I think some of that is because it takes more than 2 or 3 watches to really delve into a lot of the concepts that I think are being explained in this film. And personally, I think there's a lot of like allegoric references, metaphors, symbolism, things that I've definitely noticed but don't really feel confident in like talking about it for an hour, even in my own sort of perspective, because I don't know that it really matters, right? I feel like the film has so many question marks because I think the overview of what the film is sort of putting out there is this concept of humanity and what it means and what we do with it and how we react and how we change and how we grow, products of our society, of our environment. So that's like a base level of how deep this film actually goes. I'm just kind of giving an overview, but yeah, I don't really know how to explain it, which is why I think this is one of those films where like you can try to market it and like upsell it or whatever to people, but it's really something that you just have to see, and then when you watch it you'll know exactly why I'm speaking about it in the way that I am. I do think that this film is a standalone. I don't really remember what came out in 2018. It's a really long time ago. But I do think it's a standalone in the sense that like I can't really compare it to anything because I don't think there's anything that's just like it or as interesting as it is. And I don't really recall any films that have the same sense of this film in the sense that it lingers years later. Like years later I was still thinking about scenes from this film because they were haunting or sad or relatable in a way that feels like the growing pains of adulthood and maturing. And by the way that I'm describing it, I do think people would be like, oh well, that's easy, that's simple, we all do that, we all go through that. But it's just the way that the film approaches it and the director decides to tell this story. There are scientific elements, there's a lot of discussion about cells and duplicates and DNA and the things that shouldn't exist existing. Basically, there's like this specific location and there's like this wall of glimmer that they call the shimmer, and on the other side of that things are like time is different. Well, it seemed like time is probably different. Things are multiplying in strange ways, reformatting themselves, and clearly there's a lot of energy that's being let off with this, and like there's like a base near it where they're studying it and trying to figure out what's going on. And when I say there, I mean probably like some form of the government and some scientists and psychologists and stuff where they've like set up camp. And they send like this group of soldiers to go scope out the shimmer, but that doesn't really go as planned, and it happens to be that the husband of one of these ladies that ends up going in the shimmer, who happens to be the main character, he ends up not coming home for like a year, and the wife is trying to process, you know, the possibility that her husband is dead and that she'll probably never know if he's dead or how he died or if he's coming back. But this, just all the sense of like she didn't really get told anything is kind of the answer for her. Like they don't really have any answers, but he's not coming back, so you assume he's dead. But this particular situation is more than just war, because even when he was going on his assignment, he didn't really tell his wife a lot, but she assumed that it was like some pretty top secret stuff because he was so like iffy about it, and he wouldn't tell her so many details even when she like reached out to him trying to figure it out. And the main character, Lena, she is our main perspective, so we do follow throughout her life. She's like some professor. We see pretty early on that she's in this weird period of like grieving her husband, who she doesn't really know is dead but assumes he's dead, and it's been about a year. She cheated on her husband, I think, before he left, and I think he might have found out, but there's no real inkling that he did find out. You can just see like flashbacks to some parts when they were married and they were getting along and flirting and being like really cute together, and then other times where they're fighting, or not fighting, but I guess they're just like distant and they're kind of talking in circles, and things just feel very gray and monotone, and yeah, different vibe. So anyway, the thing that really brings all these elements together, you know, her finding out about this little top secret mission that he went on and never returned from until one day, of course, her finding out what could have or did or didn't happen, her ending up going into the shimmer herself. She used to be a soldier herself, now she's some sort of professor in science. Science is a big thing in this, and I'm not always super comfortable with science and math, and her ending up on this like base where they're studying what's going on. Basically, her husband just shows up one day and he can't really tell her what happened, where he's been, how he got there. He looks like her husband, although he's kind of acting like a robot. She's upset with him, she wants answers, understandably so, and then he like takes a drink from his glass that she set for him, and you start seeing blood pouring into the glass. Not pouring, but like dripping. And she like freaks out, and he starts sort of, not, I think he was kind of convulsing, but you can tell he's getting sick. So then the ambulance is called, and then while they're in the ambulance and he's not doing well and she's with him, these other cars show up. They look like police cars, probably like FBI or something top secret, because they don't look like regular police cars. And then she wakes up and she's in like that like center that they've set up base, and that's where she finds out about the mission via this psychologist, Dr. V. I'm just gonna call her Dr. V. And they kind of play, Lena and Dr. V play sort of this cat and mouse game where like they kind of tell each other everything that they want each other to know, but not too much, and while still trying to ask their questions of each other. And you can imagine that Lena just sort of like being in this random place without her consent and not knowing what happened to her husband, or what is happening to her husband, is freaking her out. She finds out that her husband is like having organ failure, like all his organs are like failing, which is really crazy to happen at all, but especially all at once. And then Dr. V tells her about the shimmer and what they found out about it and how they sent the soldiers over, and like stuff. And honestly, I don't even know how they knew that the husband was home, unless they were like wiretapping her phone or something. I don't know. That's something that I didn't question as much as I should have when I was watching. And anyway, because I said this wasn't going to be a long one, because I don't really feel like a summary is going to do this justice, and I don't really have that type of energy. I just really would like people to watch this film because I think it's overlooked, and I don't think that's fair. Lena goes on this sort of self-discovery journey, and it's a discovery of having to face her lies. You know, she cheated on her husband. She starts lying to the other women that are going on this mission with her, because she's so set on like trying to find the answers to exactly what happened to her husband. And she doesn't actually figure that out until closer to the very end, and he like documents it on camera, amongst other things. They also have like this mystery element of finding out like the science behind everything that's going on, or at least that the science behind what's going on doesn't actually work in the real world. Like, it's almost things that should be impossible. And you find out the backgrounds to all these other women's stories and why they're probably there, despite the fact that they probably won't go back alive, or at least not as who they were. What the shimmer does to their bodies, how each person has their own background, and how the shimmer affects each of them differently, about the horrors of the shimmer and the creatures that lurk, and Lena's final battle with the thing that is causing all of this, and like this sort of lighthouse that's like the tipping point of everything that's either going to win or lose the situation for Lena. And she kind of has almost a direct reflection of fighting herself in a way, but it's really, really interesting and layered, and I think that everyone should watch Annihilation at least once. And this is just a quick little snippet of my thoughts about the film and things that stood out. And it's scary in a way that isn't just like a jump scare or like a ghost, but the absolute horror this film has in some of those very short scenes, because of the way that they present someone's like last moments, or just like the ugliness of the world, is the thing that I think really sort of makes this film unique from other horror films. And again, I could sit here and sort of explain those scenes, but I don't think that me explaining it will do it justice, because it's just something you have to watch. Like, I don't know how else to explain it, and you have to see it on screen. So I'm gonna go to my last segment and talk about some quotes that did stand out. So this is a conversation between Lena and Dr. V, but I'm just going to say this one specific section that Dr. V says. Then, as a psychologist, I think you're confusing suicide with self-destruction. Almost none of us commit suicide, and almost all of us self-destruct. In some way, in some part of our lives, we drink or we smoke, we destabilize the good job and a happy marriage. But these aren't decisions. They're impulses. In fact, you're probably better equipped to explain this than I am. And Lena says, what does that mean? In another scene between Dr. V and Lena, it's destroying everything. And Lena says, it's not destroying, it's making something new. And then this is from another character, one of the women who went over to the Shimmer with Lena and Dr. V, named Josie. Imagine dying frightened and in pain, and having that as the only part of you which survives. Thanks for listening to this short recording. hopefully next month, maybe later this month, I'll have a much longer recording. I just felt like I should shout out Annihilation, and again, I don't think that a summary could have done this justice, so I think you really should just watch it. You can watch it for free on YouTube. There'll be ads, but I'm sure there are other avenues that you can rent this film if you don't want ads. And yeah, thanks, and have a great day. Bye.
Imagine dying frightened and in pain and having that as the only part of you which survives. I wouldn't like that at all.